Jameer Leonard, reported missing July 25th. His body wasn't located until 7 days later, July 31st, in the Meherrin River. Jameer and his family are originally from the New Jersey area. They moved to Emporia in 2002, so he had been here a while and had quite a few friends.
He went out one night and he came back the next morning and he was sweating so bad. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and that was unusual for him. And he was saying that he's sorry for all the things that he had done and put us through, and that he loved us. And like about 20 minutes or so later, he just started like talking out of his head, saying that some people was looking for him. He started closing the blinds up in the house. He was taking our phones, going through our phones, and we was like, what are you doing? And he was like, them people, they looking for me. They looking for me. And I'm like, what people?
Jameer's case is a very complicated one, so let me explain a few things for you. Leading up to Jameer's disappearance, he was taken 3 times in 2 days to a hospital for an evaluation. The very last time they took him in, it was recommended by doctors that he stay there and they legally hold Jameer and transfer him to Poplar Springs, which is a psychiatric hospital.
The District 19 service provider told us that he found a bed for him, that he was going to a facility, Poplar Springs, and that didn't happen.
The order was denied by a magistrate and Jameer was inevitably discharged. Well, according to these documents, it showed the magistrate denied the order because he believed it was drug-induced and Jameer didn't need any restraints. So the Greensville County Sheriff's Department picked him up, took him to a friend's apartment on Meherrin River Lane. Now you may ask yourself, why would he go there instead of going home? Well, Jameer was 21, so he'd go wherever he wanted to go.
If it wasn't for me, I don't think he would have never been found, because I'm the one that called them and told them that I had went over to where his phone was pinging, and I just got like this real bad feeling in my stomach. And I said, I just think y'all need to search the river. My fear is that somebody did this to him. They took his organs and sold them. He was a very young, vibrant young man with just nothing but life. And somebody took advantage of him, and they saw that he was not in his right state of mind. And I almost feel like to the point of he was set up.
The Angel and the Devil. If you had an infinite chessboard in your cupboard, who would you want to play? Like many difficult things, the rules are super simple. One of the players is the Angel, and at each turn the Angel flies to some square on the board. Before the game begins, we would agree on how far the Angel is able to travel, and we call that number of squares its power. For instance, the Angel of Power 1 can travel just 1 square in any direction, essentially the king in chess. An Angel of Power 2 could travel anywhere within this region, one of Power 3 to any of these squares, and so on. In comes the second character, the Devil. Whenever the Devil lands on a square, it burns that square, making it inaccessible to the Angel for the remainder of the game. Much like the Angel, on every turn the Devil can move to another square, but unlike the Angel, is able to travel as far as it wishes. And those are basically the rules. The Devil then wins the game if it eventually traps the Angel, and the Devil has a winning strategy if it is always able to win. A useful way to think about this is the Devil having a set of instructions such that regardless of what the Angel does, the Devil can look up the current layout in its large instructions book and deliver the perfect reply, which will keep the Angel contained in some large predetermined region at all times. The Angel has a winning strategy if the Devil doesn't, meaning it can always evade the Devil. So which character here has the upper hand? Well, when John Conway introduced this problem, and when he then wrote an article about it some years later, he published a collection of counter-strategies to ones that might seem appealing initially. I will briefly talk about the first and simplest. One idea you might have is, I'll have my Angel fly some amount of north at every move. Conway calls this Angel the Fool, and that's because the Fool loses to the Devil. Let's take a Fool of Power 1. Here's what the devil will do. It'll picture all the squares the Fool might land on in the forthcoming terms, and it plans to build a wall on the row just after. The devil also takes note of the half distance between the Fool and the future wall. Every time the Fool moves, the devil burns 1 out of 4 squares above. When the Fool reaches the halfway point, the devil restricts its interest to the new, smaller region now accessible to the Fool and concentrates its efforts on a shorter barrier. With every move, the devil burns squares so that half are now taken, and we repeat twice more, blocking the Fool of Power 1. Conway's first example is to show that this can be scaled to beat Fools of any power, using the exact same tactic of progressively filling in a wall of suitable width far away, and every time the Fool halves its distance from there, the devil restricts its efforts to a wall half that size. The distance at which the devil builds its wall gets big extremely quickly. In fact, even for a Fool of Power 2, to be completely foolproof, the devil should start building around 8.5 billion squares north of it. For 24 years, the world only knew the Angel of Power 1 would lose, but otherwise the question remained open. Then suddenly in 2006, 4 different, independent proofs came about answering some amount of the core question. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the really clever argument Andras Mate makes to prove that Angels of Power 2 or more have a winning strategy, which answers the question completely. What I like about Mate's creative argument is that it involves introducing 2 new characters, and one of those is the Nice Devil. The Nice Devil avoids all squares which the Angel could have accessed at an earlier stage of the game. So the Angel is effectively building a growing region the Devil cannot land on. It might seem like this is a disadvantage, but here's our first fact. If the devil beats the angel, so does the Nice Devil. In other words, this restriction is not a disadvantage at all. Here's how the proof goes. Suppose the devil has a winning strategy, and say the Angel of Power 2 has flown along this path so far. The Nice Devil then does the following. It imagines the angel traveling backward, but selecting the oldest possible square it can reach at each step. The result is a new, legitimate path between the starting point and the end, which we call the reduced path. The Nice Devil looks at this path, conjures the Evil Devil, and asks, what move would you make if the angel had taken this reduced path? If the devil answers with a square within the forbidden region for the Nice Devil, we'll just have the Nice Devil pass that turn, but otherwise, the Nice Devil will simply follow the real devil's advice. There is, however, one subtlety that needs taken care of. What if when asked, the devil cannot give an answer? What if the devil says, I'm sorry, Nice Devil, but I never would have let this path happen, because I would have occupied one of these squares if I'd seen an earlier portion of this path? Well, if that were the case, there are 2 possibilities. If that square were outside of the forbidden region at that earlier stage of the game, the Nice Devil would have also burnt it, contradicting the existence of the original path. The only other possibility is if this burnt square were inside that earlier region. But then this would disagree with the path reduction we found initially, since that burnt square comes strictly later than the one the angel is on. So the reduced path is always recognized by the devil. And if the devil has a winning strategy, this path is a losing path for the angel, meaning the position of the angel is being kept inside some large predetermined region at all times, so the Nice Devil, which has the angel in that same position, also wins.
In game theory, there are 2 types of games. There are finite games and there are infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and agreed upon objective. Baseball, right? An infinite game is defined as known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the objective is to perpetuate the game. When you pit a finite player versus a finite player, the system is stable. Baseball is stable. So is conventional war, for that matter. When you pit an infinite player versus an infinite player, the system is also stable. The Cold War was stable. And that's because in an infinite game, there are no winners and losers. We cannot lose the game. And so we work to keep the game in play, right? In fact, because there are no winners and losers, the only thing a player can do is drop out when they either run out of the resources or the will to play. Problems arise, however, when you pit a finite player versus an infinite player. It's the finite player who then gets caught in quagmire.
Hello. This is about the levels of consciousness and how it applies to the targeted individual program and what they're hoping to achieve, and how it is an energy war. And the map of consciousness, which I'm using here to refer to what is actually being done, is by Dr. David Hawkins. And he calls it the map of the scale of consciousness. And it's a logarithmic map. And you have a dividing line here. Above you have the levels of truth, which are beneficial to the person. The person has higher levels of energy, which is just happiness, really. High energy is just happiness, as said by Dr. David Hawkins. And the higher the level of energy, generally the higher level of happiness of the person. Also, the higher the level of consciousness of person, which is the same thing I'm referring to, actually, the more ability they have to impact the world in positive ways and to direct their own future in positive ways, karma permitting. And below that you have the levels of falsehood. And these are logarithmic levels, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So these are the higher levels. The divining line is the level of courage, because that is when you can change things in your life, when you've got the energy and the power and the personal power to change things. And you do that by affirmation, because you're empowered. That's the process of it. And, you think you're feasible, life's feasible, you've got courage, you're not afraid. And that's the beginning of the levels of personal power, and also the levels of influencing the world in a positive way, and also counterbalancing the general negativity of the world. Just a few people at the very top of this, see, it's logarithmic consciousness level. Just a few people at the top counterbalance, according to Dr. David Hawkins, the whole of the lower negativity in the world, and prevent the world from self-destructing. I'm referring to this map and targeted individuals and the targeted individual program because it's significant in that it is an energy war. The war is on our energy levels, and there is, if you can take somebody, say you have a TI, and for instance they're at the very high energy level of truth. These are general. They're not. You're not stuck at this all the time. They have, like a certain octave of it. You have a certain range. But generally, it can be done to a mean. So people around the level of, say, willingness. You have the emotion of optimism. The process is intention. Yeah. And they're willing, they're hopeful, and they're inspiring. You have somebody at that very positive level, and the perps try their best to drive that person down to the level of apathy and hatred. And the emotion of apathy and hatred is despair. The process is abdication. So that they feel hopeless and condemning. So you have the once hopeful person now feeling hopeless. They was once inspiring and inspired, now they condemn. They was optimistic, but now they're in despair. So that is the perp's intention, isn't it? With all the tactics that are used to do that. So what is very interesting is you have somebody, we'll go back up to that hypothetical personality, at 310, the logarithmic energy level. Hypothetically, in this instance, if the perps have driven that person down to the energy level of 50, so that they're feeling these things, in that instance, what they have done, there's been an energy exchange. So you have the 310, now it's down to 50. What's the difference between 310 and 50? 260. Where's that energy gone? It's gone to the perps. That is why this is an energy war. Also, by driving somebody's energy lower down, they tend to become less effective, obviously. They've got less personal power in the world. These energy levels are not very efficient because they're obsessed with propagating anxiety, withdrawal. That's one of the things they try and do. They tend to go around in circles. So somebody really desires something, then they get angry because they can't have it, then they might fall to being afraid. So they sort of go around upon themselves, which again is a lower energy state, which also impacts society, because as Dr. David Hawkins said, the higher levels here, just the percentage of people at the higher levels, such as reason, love's a very high level, that's 500, such as reason, which doesn't have emotion in it. Reason is understanding, abstraction, and it's a wise view. You know, it's meaningful. They feel life's meaningful, but they've got reason, and it's unemotional. So there's a kind of a separation between events and looking at them, which doesn't really impact the world negatively, it impacts the world positively. And above that you have love and acceptance, willingness, not that we should accept our situation, but if you can find something in your day to accept and feel harmonious about, because when you accept things, you do feel harmonious. And you feel that God is merciful, and you transcend things through forgiveness. But I don't think that accepting our situation is going to help too much, because this is an energy war. If we can stay at 350 and we can feel these things and not throw up any of these, call up any of this anger or desire to change things or fear or grief or pride, if we can do that, then, you know, great. But the higher levels are very effective. And that's basically what is attempting to be done. But by taking people from these levels here and removing them to these levels here does impact society. If there isn't a certain amount of people radiating these higher energy levels, then society will self-destruct through the lower energy levels. If you've got everybody feeling all these things, it's just gonna go further down, which is where the perps do try to get you feeling guilt, apathy, hatred, despair, humiliation, etc. So what can we do? There was a book by Victor, it was called Man's Search for Meaning, and it said in the book, very important, that man can choose his reaction. He can choose the way he thinks and feels about any given situation, even if he can't choose his circumstances. Taking that in mind, these circumstances that are being thrown and being perpetrated on targeted individuals seek to drive by emotion and by playing on the thoughts of unfairness. They tend to make people feel vengeful and aggressive, and energy is going out when somebody feels anger, not that anger is wrong. And if they can keep that going, they can lower the energy of the person. And this is what these gangstalkers, this is what the tactics by the surveillance, loss of privacy, everything else seek to do to lower our energy. Now, going back to the book, Man's Search for Meaning, and the basis of that was that book was that man, no matter how terrible his circumstances, he can choose how he feels and how he thinks about a situation. So rather than just react and feel these things we could dedicate ourselves to feeling one of these, even if only for a few minutes, and then put our attention on these higher levels and what creates these higher levels. Obviously, we will be impeded. The perps are deliberately designed their program to prevent us from accessing anything that's going to help us access these higher levels.
When the wicked, even my enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though hosts should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this I will be confident. One thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me upon a rock. Christ. The mystery of Jesus is hidden. The people of Christ in the mystery are hidden. No, they're not usually the people occupying churches. They are hidden in the realm of the Most High. It's a spiritual place because the world will encamp against you, seek to destroy you, seek to do harm to you if you are a believer, and especially if you come from any kind of place where there are major hypocrites, such as any kind of high society or anything like that. They consider it a personal vendetta that any of theirs, so to speak, will get away and go to Jesus, and they feel like it's open season against them to destroy their character, create false rumors, character assassination, and so forth. And all these things I have experienced. All these things have been done against me. I have had no voice, no ability to rebut, no ability to say what I had to say, no ability to be listened to. As far as my talk about Elisha and the child, when a parent starves a child of love, basically the child keeps seeking for that love, and when they don't get it, they're traumatized, and that trauma gets fed upon by the Satanist mother or father. And that is a very common thing. So that child can never rise in prominence, can never become a man or a woman, just remains kind of like a host to be fed upon and then blamed later when things don't go well as the cause of the grief for the parent vampire who is feeding upon the child that they hate. Now, I think that you're starting to get the idea, as I've kind of cobbled this broadcast together, that there's a great deal of insight here that's well beyond anything that any of us have ever heard in the media, well beyond anything that's ever been analyzed by psychology or psychiatry or psychology, well beyond, formal group rituals of this or that, or, this Hollywood-esque kind of idea of Satanism and all this sensationalism. It goes beyond Rosemary's Baby and all that kind of Hollywood-esque stuff. Paranoia, gangstalking, hive mind, all those things, supernatural, witchcraft, controlling others. We get into the fundamental principle of feeders and feedees, those who are fed upon, those who are set up as victims to take the fall, to hide the ones who are the elites, who are the hypocrites, who are the money grubbers, who are the ones who are doing the evil in society, and then foisting it upon those who don't have the ability to fend for themselves because they're children just wanting their parents' love and keep seeking it over and over again, sometimes throughout their lifetime, but then being manipulated through that desire to take the fall in order to deflect the guilt from the guilty to the innocent. Do you understand? Is that about as clear as it could be put in a general way. And I've seen some cruelty that you have no idea. The cruelty of, murdering your children, I suppose, that nothing goes beyond that. But I've seen that. And then the children be blamed after they die. But, I know one guy that jumped off a building because he couldn't get his mother's love, because she was cold. And when he did, he said something like either something to his mother upon doing his Geronimo leap from the building, and he leapt to his death. And then the mother was seen as a martyr and a victim, and all society had sympathy for her, but she was an ice queen. She restricted her love. He couldn't get it. He was driven mad by it. And he killed himself because he couldn't amount to anything in society. Because when a mother denies her love, it automatically ensures that the child will not be able to, especially if it's a game, if it has structure to it, that child will not be able to amount to anything, not be able to be independent, and so he leaps to his death. Knowing that he was a sacrificial victim of his mother, who was a Satanist witch, who is a member of the Junior League, of every charity in LA, the Realtors Association, sold houses in Beverly Hills, and so forth and so on. No one would suspect that this woman would have done this to her son. And I want to take it even a step further. I don't think she could help herself or even was totally aware of what she was doing. It was just a dynamic in the relationship, and she couldn't help it because she could do it. It gave her power. It gave her psychic power, personal power. It was like a drug. It made her high. And then when he died, she got to blame it all on him, and then she got a big pop out of that. But there's nobody home. She had sold her soul to Satan early on as a child. There was nobody to receive that power or to receive the gift for the denial of love and destroying one's child, then having the sympathy of society that, oh, isn't that awful how awful your son was. Yeah, I remember that incident, and I remember my own parents telling me about the incident, and I remember how they had sympathy for the mother, and I didn't understand. It never really rested with me. I spent 50 years figuring this out. What most shrinks could never figure out, I have figured out, because I understand this dimension of feeding. You see, it's completely legal. Nobody, no one. Well, I started with the example of Elisha and the child because I just wanted you to see that nothing is impossible. In other words, that child, and let's face it, I'm using child here as a metaphor. A child means anyone or any adult. No, you will not interrupt me. Trish will take care of it. Anyone or any child, any adult who has been kept in a childlike state because of something like that can be revived by the Lord. Remember this: if your mother and father forsake you, I, the Lord, will never forsake you. Usually when a parent behaves in such a way, no, I'm not dealing with the dogs. Usually when the parent behaves in such a way, they themselves were victims of abuse. And in the case that I am very familiar with, generational abuse and tremendous sick abuse. was an institutionalized thing, completely covered by society. Nobody would ever suspect these good men and women of being so wicked. And the weak, the lambs among them, all become the bad guys. The ones whose reputations are ruined, the drug users, the losers, the dropouts. I assure you, my friends, they did not deserve that rap in many cases. In some they do. But I mean, in most cases, they don't deserve it. They were driven to it because they were the wrong sort of person. They were not, they were seen as, oh, a lamb, oh, good, we get to pile on and ruin that life and suck it up, and we all win. Remember, in Proverbs 1, we share one purse when we destroy one's life. We wait privily for them to stumble. We set a trap for them to fall into and then suck off the energy. And then we go back to the PTA, the Junior League, the Cancer Society, being a trustee of University of Southern California, being a lawyer, being a prominent, you know what I'm saying? I mean, these are things I know, icons. Oh, I'm going to unfold the whole thing one day, but it's going to be, it will be a big thing. I'm just giving you the fruit of my knowledge here. So in other words, this dynamic that is working in these families, America's deepest, darkest secret, that determines who are winners and who are losers, who is completely in cahoots and entwined with Satan, that makes sure that all pure hearts and earnest ones are destroyed, and all the ones that should not live and become honchos. And no one's the wiser, because when somebody acts up, it's their fault and the finger of blame goes on them. And the finger of sympathy and the hand of sympathy rests upon the perpetrators and criminals who will feed on, not just sell out their own children, but destroy and kill their own children. I'm aware of a funeral where one mother's child died. He was a loser. So she's crying. Then she looks over at someone. After the funeral, tears are all dried up. She starts smiling and laughing, mocking, and says to this person, "How did I do?" Regarding how were those crocodile tears? Were those convincing? How was I as an actor? And it was just like that, on that level. They say that revenge is sweetest when it's a betrayal. In other words, when someone has your confidence and you reel them in, and you think, and you're giving them a form of love and friendship and camaraderie, and then the knife comes out, and then the poison is put in the food, and then the person goes down, and then, oh, it's that person's fault, and the perpetrators never get caught, and life goes on. These are the murderers of our society. This happens daily. I know several incidents of this, and several Jezebel parents who help facilitate this, but then it's done in a structured way. In other words, it's done in cahoots with a whole network of, pedophile Satanists who then cooperate with one another to bring that host or bring that person to a point of self-destruction. It's all orchestrated behind the scenes, and then everyone laughs about it and high-fives each other when the target is dead. This makes the idea of an Illuminati breeder look completely almost innocent in comparison. And then, you have groups of witches who also do the same thing. They'll identify the weak one in the crowd, target him, make him flip out, either throw him into an institution or have him kill himself, and then they all celebrate. And this goes on a daily basis. And then what happens to people who play this game throughout their lives, when they get older, they have no heart, no conscience, and no soul. No soul. No conscience, no heart, no soul. They have total disregard for human life. Only the game is important and winning. And remember, they're also competing against each other. Who's going to live the longest, who's the richest, who's, and all that. And these are usually women who do their men in the form of witches in concert with Satan, whose souls are long gone, whose hearts are long gone, whose compassion is long gone. Only when you need to play a compassion, oh, I'm so sorry. Everything is fake. The hope of this is that a child who's in this situation, and I've known several, who cannot live because love is being withheld and cannot grow and cannot adapt to society because they're being messed with. Come on in, come on in. Why are you here? Come on in, I'll love you. Come on in, I'll love you. Why did you come in here? Go ahead and do that. Go. Oh, you did that. You're a real loser. That sort of thing. And this goes out to all the victims that I've known. Lambs all. People that if they were any less of society, if they were in any lesser faction, meaning more poor, you know what I mean? If they just happened to have been born not as an heir to this or that or the other thing. I'm thinking now of the case of the two heirs to the Oscar Mayer fortune that were my friends, my best friends. Two brothers, Mark and Todd. And both of them iced. These were both, the mother was a drunk, kind of, had 7 husbands, always there at the bar. They had a bar in their house in Beverly Hills, always there at the bar. There was like a pool table in there. And she would not give her children love. She was incapable of it. And she had a whole game going with all these men and suitors, and she was, because she was wealthy, she had all these people competing for her money and buttering her up. And so she just played this game of having, just feeding the fish, right? All the people coming for her money to see if they could be the ones. And so they'd have like almost drunken orgies every day. And the children, meanwhile, upstairs are starved of love, going to private school, trying to excel in sports, trying to do anything to get the approval, not knowing who their father is really also. So no mother and no father. And it's not surprising they wound up dead, being a sacrifice. And in one case, it was a suicide, gun to the head. But I know damn well it was no suicide. It was an orchestrated hit of driving a very sensitive being to pull the trigger, using a girl to do it, a relationship. And the other was labeled an accident. They both died pretty close to each other, the two boys. And the other, in case of Todd, he just drove off a cliff, but I know that's not true. I know it was a hit, and because I remember him at this beach club hanging out with a guy who became an Academy Award-winning producer. And he was the handler. No, this was when we were kids, when we were like 18. And I was completely messed up. In the same state as my friend Todd. And Todd looked at me going, it's everyone, it's everyone. He had woken up to the fact that there was a conspiracy, that there was a hive mind, that there was this satanic criminal cabal that one must join in order to not be killed. That all these people were in on it. And he was being targeted. And he had two choices, whether to accept it and roll with it, thus being corrupted, I guess, how do you jibe with murder? Because you have to agree to that. So I guess he would or to just be outraged. But he'd woken up and he was looking around and he was calling out to me saying, what about all this? What are we going to do? You know, and he was really freaked out. Next thing I hear, well, I have my own problems. So I was being handled by other people at that time. You know, they made sure that none of us had any freedom. And the next thing I know, he winds up dead. And my psychiatrist told me he wound up dead. He didn't make it, he said. Those were the words, the exact words he used. He didn't make it. It gets even more weird. I was at a Christian bookstore in the valley of San Fernando Valley, LA. It's closed now, out on Van Nuys Boulevard. Guy gets out of a car, walks right up to me, says, you're a minister. I didn't even know I was a minister yet. He said, you're a minister. And the next thing he goes is, who's Todd? Just like that. He looked right up. He was some kind of prophet, you know. Who's Todd? And I said, he's my friend that was, you know, whacked. And he said, well, just forget about it. He's at peace with the Lord. He's at peace. He's in a good place. It's okay. This is years later, and I mean, no one, this is a random guy in a parking lot as I'm getting into my car. That didn't really comfort me completely. You know, it gave me, you know, I was happy to have the word. I was happy to receive that he's all right, to not worry about him, to not feel there was such an injustice done, that the Lord's taking care of his own. And he was, if anything, a lamb, you know. You would have loved this guy. His mother did not. And he deserved it, to be loved. But anyway, that being said, the two of them died pretty close to each other, time-wise, you know, within a few years anyway. And thus the legacy, the dark Oscar Mayer story goes forward. No, but I know a lot more things than that. That's just one little thing. Had either one of them not been an Oscar Mayer heir, they'd be alive today. If they were just in some middle-class family somewhere, I mean, they might have a battle, but, you know, not necessarily a death sentence. America is intolerant, though. And this game is afoot. And since it's not illegal, you know, people get away with it. There's an awful lot of women involved in this. There's more Jezebels today, and that's all we're talking about. There's more Jezebel witch queens today than ever before, and they prey upon the living. And if you don't bow down and come unto them, as it says in Ezekiel 13, beginning at verse 17, then they will seek to destroy you. The souls that should live, they make die, and those, you know, Todd should have lived, Mark should have lived. And the ones that should die, they make live. They become president. Mr. Liar in Chief. You know, a lie every 10 seconds. More lies than any other president. Of course, they all lie. But I mean, you know, it's gotten to a point now where, you know, so all the people in the media are liars too, or they wouldn't cover this stuff like they do. So now we're in a situation that we can't recover from. But believe me, they're going to blame the righteous. They're going to blame the good people. They're going to blame people that love the country of the Constitution. They're going to label them as terrorists. I mean, you see how they do it. They're going to vilify them in the press. They're going to destroy their reputations of people that do good. They're going to destroy the reputation of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They're going to destroy any kid that they have living in Beverly Hills that just doesn't get shallow and materialistic and mean and rotten and, like I say, satanic, throwing whammies on everybody and just playing the game and sassing it up all the while the girls are trained to look for the right target husband who's got big bucks. Only eventually to take them down and take their money too, because there's no respect for anyone with a pair of balls, ever. You assert yourself in that way, be a man, you will be excused, incarcerated, taken away, targeted, whatever. They're only interested in yes men, dupes. So when I look at, say, LA society, I see men being mainly yes men, dupes, pathetic, not worthy of respect as a man, because they bow down to these witch queens, and they become, so they wouldn't be killed or iced or offed or isolated through fear. And they work as real estate agents and dentists and shrinks and developers and software engineers, and they're firmly ensconced in slavery. Their souls are gone, and the whole thing continues to perpetuate. Then it gets to the point where nobody can really, there's no one alive. And you have to really understand that this particular system and these people that run it, they have no interest in living things, only in death, only in destruction, only in pain, only in causing others pain. That's all they feed on. They'll invent rumors about a person so that that person will be destroyed, their feelings hurt, and then they feed off the trauma of that hurt. I saw that just the other day. Terrible, terrible, awful to see it. And if they don't feed off that, they'll die. Yeah. They need to create that sort of thing. They need to have a host to feed on, or symbiotic relationships, or children that they can sacrifice, or they won't live. And that's the conundrum they're in. That's what's motivating them. They want to live on even though they're like a walking corpse. No feelings, no soul, no ambition, no nothing. Just the game. That's it. And they're willing to sacrifice anything and everyone who's real, and everyone who's feeling, everyone who has a conscience. They're all targeted.
Surveillance state.
I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on, because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And and I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be, because a whole place can't be like, Weird Town, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them, and they tell you don't go into the house on the hill, and it's like that. And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time, and you think, No, he came to see me on a rooftop in New York. I said, hey, can I talk to you? And he said, sure. And he floated in, sideways, through a crowd of people. He was wearing black, and it was like one of those old vampire movies where they don't walk, but they glide. And he was a dancer, so he has he's very, graceful.
Yeah.
And he moved sideways, and he just sat down in a chair next to me. And it kind of frightened me. And he's a very smart guy. And we started talking, and I didn't, say much of anything about reading the script, nothing. I just started talking about the Middle Ages, and he began to talk tortures. And we swapped tortures, because I'd read this book on torture, and I tried to recall some of the most heinous things I'd ever read in this book, and he was like, oh, and he'd try and top it. And and my assistant was there, and he left because he couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
The air had turned cold. And then he left, and I wanted to leave. And because I knew that I didn't want to work with him.
Yeah.
And he was getting scary.
Yeah.
There's a producer I know, successful producer, I will not mention names, but his whole opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief. He says, women on film, either naked or dead. Both is better. And it's like, whoa, whoa. The man has got a spiritual malady for a start. I mean, the scary thing is that I think a lot of people think that.